Welcome to today's story, a journey filled with emotions, where secrets slowly unfold and the truth keeps you hooked until the very end. Before we immerse ourselves in today's gripping tale, a brief reminder. More than 90% of our viewers enjoy our videos but have not yet subscribed. If you appreciate content like this, please take a moment to click that subscribe button and enable notifications to stay updated with our latest posts. If you find this story captivating, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. It truly assists us. My name is Clara, and I have been married to my husband, Daniel, for more than 14 years. We crossed paths in college, one of those tales that people share at reunions, reminiscing with warm smiles. He possessed a captivating charm in those days, with a sharp wit, a strong ambition, and an unwavering confidence in his direction. I tended to be the more reserved individual, attentive, gentle in speech, and attracted to a sense of security. We complemented one another in ways that felt right in that moment. We tied the knot at a young age, perhaps a bit too early. I was merely 23, while Daniel was 25. In our formative years, we navigated a landscape of rented apartments, student loans, ramen dinners, and debates over whose responsibility it was to tackle the dishes. Yet, our love endured through everything. I believed we did, at the very least. As we reached our mid-30s, everything had shifted. Daniel had established a thriving career in finance, while I had chosen to step back from mine to raise our two children, Lila and James. I accepted that decision without any issues. Initially, I convinced myself that being at home for the kids was a noble choice, believing that my constant presence in their lives would hold greater value than any salary. Gradually, and without my awareness, I began to lose fragments of who I am. The days started to merge into one another. Early mornings, packed lunches, school drop-offs, grocery lists, meal preps, late nights. Amid Daniel's business trips and board meetings, our conversations shifted away from the topics that truly mattered. Discussions evolved into progress reports. Embraces evolved into habits. The closeness diminished, supplanted by the practicalities of family living. I didn't hold him fully responsible. We allowed the distance to increase between us. What pained me the most was the sense of being overlooked. Then, during the last spring, everything started to change. Aiden moved back next door at that time. He had spent his childhood 2 houses down, the sole offspring of the Learys, who had been our neighbors for many years. Aiden came to mind as a lively, spirited child, constantly kicking a soccer ball or riding his bike with a group of other boys. Upon reaching the age of 18, he departed for college in California, and for many years, we seldom received any updates about him. After his mother passed away, he returned at the age of 23, having just graduated, to care for his father, who was struggling with health issues. The first time I encountered him again, he was unloading boxes from a U-Haul. I was trimming the hedges out front when, for a brief moment, I failed to recognize him. He stood tall, with broad shoulders, exuding the effortless confidence that is often found in those in their 20s. He grinned upon seeing me. "Mrs. Owens?" he inquired. I chuckled. "That name is not permitted for you to use when referring to me. It gives me an impression of being very old." He smiled broadly. "I apologize. So, Clara?" That was the beginning. A simple smile, a name, a chance to reconnect. In the weeks that came after, I would encounter him frequently. He would mow the lawn for his dad, take their dog for a walk, and occasionally sit on the porch, either reading or chatting on the phone. We engaged in the customary niceties that neighbors typically share. Weather updates, news reports, and a collective concern regarding delays in garbage collection. There is nothing out of the ordinary. It was during the midsummer period that our conversations began to extend in length. One afternoon, I found myself grappling with a malfunctioning sprinkler head in the backyard. Daniel was away, as always, and I was reluctant to call a plumber for something so trivial. Aiden observed from his porch and approached. "Do you require assistance?" He extended his offer. I paused for a moment, then gave a nod. "It's quite humiliating. I have been struggling with this for 20 minutes. He knelt next to me and began to tinker with a pipe. I observed him as he worked, concentrated, calm, and even slightly entertained by my exasperation. In just a few moments, the sprinkler sprang back to life. "There," he remarked, wiping the dirt from his hands. "It's quite manageable." "It's easy for you to say," I chuckled. At that instant, everything shifted. It wasn't overt or theatrical, yet I sensed it. A delicate change in the atmosphere whenever he was present. He would wave when he spotted me gardening, linger a bit longer during our conversations, and inquire about my well-being, not merely in passing, but with sincere interest. I discovered that my response was driven by more than mere politeness. There was something deeper at play. Something I was not prepared to identify. I started to anticipate our meetings with excitement. Whenever I baked, I would bring extra for him and his dad. As I took my walk, I would cast a glance toward their porch to check if he was outside. It lacked romance. Not at this time. I at least reassured myself that it wasn't. It was the recognition, the compassion, the feeling of being seen for more than just my contributions to others. One afternoon in late August, an event occurred that changed everything. The day was sweltering, and the children were visiting a friend's home. As I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea and engrossed in my book, Aiden approached, holding a folder in his hand. "Greetings," he remarked. "Would you mind if I ask for your thoughts on something?" He mentioned that he was in the process of applying to graduate schools and was seeking feedback on his personal statement. I felt honored. He recalled that I had taught English prior to my decision to stay home. We spent more than an hour engaged in a conversation about his essay, aspirations, and dreams. He paid close attention, inquired thoughtfully, and restored my sense of significance. After a moment, he reclined and remarked, "You ought to continue this, Clara. Instructing, I suppose. You possess too much intelligence to remain inactive." I gazed at him, taken by surprise. "Years have passed. I'm not sure how to start." "You would excel wonderfully. That is clear." The issue wasn't with the words themselves. It was the manner in which he expressed them, sincere and unrestrained, as if he perceived something within me that I had long overlooked. That night, sleep eluded me. I continually heard his voice, recalling the way he gazed at me, not with pity, not with politeness, but with sincere admiration. It awakened feelings within me that I had long kept hidden. In the weeks that followed, we spent more time together. He would visit with his dog, inquire about my garden, and bring me a book he believed I would enjoy. There was perpetually a reason, perpetually an excuse. However, I believe we were both aware of the reality. We never crossed any boundaries, not in a physical sense. However, what about the emotional lines? Those passed by more quickly than I anticipated. One evening, as we sat in my backyard watching the sunset, he remarked softly, "You seem lonely sometimes." I was unsure of how to reply. I wished to reject it, to act as if everything was okay. However, I was unable to do so, not with him. At times, I confessed. He nodded, then gazed at me with a blend of sorrow and comprehension. "You are worthy of so much more than merely playing a supporting role, Clara." The sentence lingered in my mind. The thought resonated in my mind as I prepared dinner, as I folded clothes, and as I sat in solitude within the stillness of the house after the children had gone to bed. I began to question everything. Had I chosen this life, or had I merely settled for it? Daniel observed the change, albeit with little attention. He was deeply engrossed in his work, consumed by meetings, and caught in an unending stream of emails and deadlines. He would inquire if all was well, but merely in a casual manner. I informed him that I was feeling fatigued. He would nod and go back to his phone. Aiden, in contrast, paid attention. He made me feel seen, valued. I was uncertain about my actions, to be honest. I had no plans in mind. I had no intention of leaving, betraying, or causing harm. I felt completely adrift. And he made me feel discovered. Yet, amidst the serene happiness of our bond, I was acutely aware that I was treading a delicate line. A single misstep, and everything could unravel. I convinced myself it was innocuous. Simply a friendship, just a person who brought me back to life. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that this innocence wouldn't last indefinitely. The subsequent days were marked by a subtle sense of bewilderment. I often found myself evaluating my actions, their appearances, and their significance. I hadn't committed any technical wrongdoing, at least not in the traditional sense. Yet, a part of me sensed that I was approaching a boundary from which I might not be able to return. I began to distance myself from Aiden, deliberately stepping back and allowing for some space. I convinced myself it was for the greater good. I had to shift my attention to Daniel, to the children, to the life I had created. I believed that by redirecting my energy into my routine and my marriage, the emotions I experienced would dissipate like mist under the warmth of the sun. However, emotions cannot simply vanish at will. I've come to understand that distance doesn't necessarily sever ties. At times, it amplifies it. Aiden refrained from pushing. He maintained a respectful distance and exhibited politeness. However, I sensed that he observed the shift. His waves were briefer, his smiles diminished. Even as his visits became less frequent, whenever our eyes met across the fence or from our porches, an unspoken understanding lingered in the air between us. The absence was palpable for both of us. At home, everything carried on as it typically did, at least on the surface. Daniel continued to put in long hours, perpetually fatigued and consistently unfocused. He began spending some nights in the guest room, stating it was due to back pain or a desire for improved sleep. I chose not to engage in a dispute. We had become accustomed to the distance. It had gradually infiltrated over the years, to the point where it nearly seemed ordinary. However, it was not. No, not really. The children, fortunately, stayed completely oblivious. They remained youthful, engrossed in their own small realms of assignments and weekend activities. I maintained a facade, prepared their lunches, assisted with school assignments, and supported Lila at her soccer games and James during his piano recitals. Yet deep down, I was coming apart. One evening, Daniel returned home later than he typically did. The clock was nearing midnight. I found myself on the couch, partially engrossed in a book, yet I hadn't flipped a page in the last 20 minutes. He placed his keys on the counter and let out a sigh. I apologize, it has been a long day. I acknowledged with a nod. You've experienced quite a few of those recently. He took a seat opposite me and rubbed his eyes. I understand, it has truly been relentless. The new clients present quite a challenge. We remained quiet for several moments. The distance separating us was palpable, vast, frigid, brimming with unspoken thoughts. Do you sometimes get the impression that we're merely sharing a living space? I inquired abruptly, my voice softer than I had meant it to be. He gazed upward, taken aback. What is it? It feels as though we are merely coexisting, moving through the motions of life. He scowled. What is the source of this? I said I didn't know. Even though I did, I suppose I simply long for conversation. Truly engaging in conversation. He let out another sigh, this one more profound.
Clara.
I am putting forth my utmost effort. The workload is quite heavy. The children require our support. We can't afford to spend our evenings dissecting our marriage. I gazed at him, and for an instant, it seemed as though I was facing an unfamiliar figure. I'm not requesting a seminar, Daniel. I would like to engage in a conversation. He stood, moving back and forth. What precisely would you like me to express? I apologize for my fatigue. Are you suggesting that I leave my job and spend the entire day on the porch with you? That was painful. Not due to its cruelty, but rather its dismissiveness. I wasn't requesting everything. I was inquiring about something. No, I responded gently. I simply desire to feel acknowledged by you. His expression wavered for an instant, caught in a delicate balance of guilt and defensiveness. Instead of replying, he exited the room. That night, I gazed at the ceiling long after the house had fallen silent. My thoughts continually returned to Aiden, to the way he would truly engage, genuinely absorbing my words as I shared them. He always made me feel like my requests were reasonable. The following day, I proceeded with my routine as normal, running errands, tidying up, and preparing dinner. In the late afternoon, I found myself outside once more, trimming the bushes along the fence that separated our yards. It was not done on purpose. That's what I reassured myself. When I spotted Aiden on his porch, headphones on, sketching in a notebook, my heart experienced a slight jolt. I paused for a moment, then raised my hand in a wave. He glanced upward, grinned, and removed his headphones. Hello, unfamiliar face. I returned the smile. Hello. He approached, halting a short distance from my position. You've been hard to find. I understand, I replied, tucking my hair behind my ear. I simply needed to clear my mind. He nodded with deliberation. Was it beneficial? I have some uncertainty. A lengthy silence lingered, not awkward, yet brimming with unexpressed sentiments. Would you like to go for a walk? He inquired abruptly, just a short distance away, nothing too significant. I paused for a moment, then gave a nod. Understood. Initially, we walked in silence, the autumn air crisp and the sky adorned with the colors of early evening. Leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the world seemed to pause, enveloped in a silence that allowed for clearer thoughts. You're not insane, you realize, he remarked after a moment. I gazed at him. For what purpose? For experiencing a sense of invisibility, for yearning for something beyond merely existing. I released a breath, its visibility marked by the crispness of the air around me. At times, it seems as though I am positioned at the center of my existence, unnoticed by those around me. He halted his steps, pivoting to confront me. I perceive your presence. The words lingered in the space that separated us. Clear, sincere, risky. I chose not to respond. I was unable to. My throat constricted, and my eyes stung. I averted my gaze, attempting to conceal the feelings that surged within me unexpectedly. He simply stood there next to me, silently, providing something I hadn't experienced in years. Existence. That evening, I perched on the edge of my bed and wept. Not due to any wrongdoing on my part, but because I was aware of the direction my heart was heading, and I felt powerless to halt its course. The ensuing weeks were laden with tension. I attempted to steer clear of Aiden once more, yet this time it seemed utterly unfeasible. Our connection became clear and definitive. It was genuine, and attempting to suppress it only intensified its presence. He never uttered a word out of line, never laid a hand on me, yet the essence of our connection felt like a delicate thread pulled taut, poised to break. One afternoon, he placed a book on my porch, a novel we had discussed during one of our previous conversations. A note was found inside. When the world becomes overwhelming, you deserve tranquility. I sat there with the book in my lap, gazing at his handwriting, sensing that the walls I had constructed around myself were collapsing more quickly than I could mend them. I began journaling once more, an activity I hadn't engaged in since my college days. I poured all of my emotions onto those pages, my confusion, my guilt, my longing, my fear. I reflected on the life I envisioned for myself and the woman I had transformed into. Amidst everything, a single truth consistently emerged. I found myself emotionally involved with someone who was not my husband. I hadn't engaged in physical infidelity, but in every significant aspect, I had crossed the lines of my marriage. One evening, Daniel and I shared a meal in quietude. The children spent the weekend at their grandparents' house, a perfect chance to strengthen their bond. We dined in two distinct realms, the clatter of silverware the sole sound connecting us. Once I finished, I tidied up the dishes and positioned myself at the sink, gazing out the window towards the street. At that moment, I spotted Aiden, strolling with his dog beneath the streetlights. He gazed upward at the house. Our eyes locked, and in that moment, I experienced it all. The potential, the remorse, the pain of a life that may forever elude me. I swiftly turned away, my heart racing, and clutched the counter tightly, causing my knuckles to turn pale. I was faced with a decision. What transpired next was clearly not a matter of chance. I had to be intentional, and I needed to determine who I was going to become. I ascended the stairs and took a seat opposite Daniel in the bedroom. He was browsing through emails on his phone. "I believe it's time for us to have a conversation," I stated. He gazed upward, weary. "What is the topic?" "Who we are, concerning all matters." He paused for a moment, then placed his phone on the table. Understood. I parted my lips to say something, yet the words eluded me at first. It was excessive. Excessive time, excessive quietness, an excess of everything that had accumulated between us. "I don't feel like I'm truly alive," I finally admitted. "I sense that I'm merely existing, moving through life without purpose, and I doubt my ability to continue this way." He gazed at me, filled with doubt. Are you indicating that you wish to depart? Text, I'm not sure. I admitted candidly. I'm expressing that a change is necessary. He leaned back, exhaling gently. You seem to be feeling discontent. No, I conceded, and I don't believe you are either. The discussion concluded without any conflict. There were neither accusations nor slamming doors. Two individuals gazing at the void that lay between them, at last recognizing its presence. I did not bring up Aiden. Not at this moment. That will happen at a later time. At this moment, I must comprehend myself before attempting to convey it to others. However, I was certain of one thing. This narrative, no matter its evolving nature, had yet to reach its conclusion. Not at this time. The subsequent days were marked by contemplation. I separated myself from both Daniel and Aiden, not due to anger, but out of necessity. I sought clarity. I dedicated more time to solitude, strolling during the early hours, finding peace in the library's quiet corners, and penning my thoughts in my journal. After many years, I confronted my true self with honesty. I acknowledged my loneliness and how the silence in my marriage had left me feeling empty. I recognized that Aiden reflected what I was lacking, though he was not the solution to all my problems. On a serene afternoon, I rapped gently on Aiden's door. He appeared taken aback, yet remained silent as I presented him with a letter. Text, I kindly asked you to read it later. I require the opportunity to reconstruct myself, independently and without reliance on others. I then turned and walked away. That evening, Daniel and I found ourselves seated at the kitchen table. I shared the truth with him, omitting some details but providing enough information. He paid attention. For once, genuinely heard. For the first time in quite a while, we engaged in conversation, not as strangers, but as two individuals contemplating the type of future, if any, they might reconstruct together. Aiden was not my choice. I selected healing. In that moment, I rediscovered who I truly am.